Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really jumping into something fascinating. Altered states of consciousness.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It is. And you, our listeners, gave us a great pile of sources. We're talking hypnosis, psychoactive drugs, how our senses even work.
Sleep, dreams, even pain perception.
Exactly. So the mission today is to pull out the core ideas, understand these shifts in awareness, but, without getting totally bogged down in technical jargon.
Right. And it's worth saying up front, like one of the crash course psychology sources mentioned, even our normal waking consciousness, it's tremendously weird.
That's such a great quote. Really puts it in perspective.
It does.
Yeah.
Because we often think of altered states as something really extreme.
Yeah, but these shifts can be subtle too, right? Things we do every day can change how we feel or perceive things.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this. How about we begin with hypnosis? It tends to come with a lot of baggage.
Misconceptions, definitely. So Crash Course describes it as basically a calm, trance-like state. You're highly focused and more open to suggestion.
Okay.
And it's not just, stage magic. There's actual research showing it can be helpful for things like stress, anxiety, helping with weight loss, even managing chronic pain.
Right. But let's hit those misconceptions head on.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks of, like, the Manchurian Candidate or Zoolander, maybe.
Yeah. That idea of being controlled, forced to do things against your will.
That's the key myth, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
The sources are clear. You do not lose control of your behavior when hypnotized. More open to suggestions, yes. Controlled, no.
So you're still in the driver's seat.
Exactly. And not everyone experiences it the same way. Crash Course points out only about 20% of people are what they call highly hypnotizable.
Like the example they gave of smelling sour milk but perceiving it as rose water?
Precisely. That level of suggestibility is less common.
Okay, so if it's not mind control, what is happening? What are the theories?
Well, there are two main ones our sources mention. First, there's the social influence theory.
Okay.
This basically says the person is playing the role of a good hypnotic subject. They trust the hypnotist, they focus, they follow instructions, kind of like getting really into a role.
So it's more about social dynamics and expectation?
That's part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But the other theory looks more inward. It's called dissociation theory.
Dissociation, like zoning out.
Sort of, yeah. It suggests hypnosis involves a split in consciousness, a kind of detachment from your immediate surroundings. And we all do this to some degree, right? Daydreaming, getting lost in a book. So hypnosis might tap into that ability. For pain relief, for instance, it might help you selectively just not attend to the pain signals.
So the video's point about being asked to dissociate, not made to.
Exactly. It's guiding that natural ability.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what makes some people more hypnotizable. They're better at willingly entering that state.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift gears from that focused calm to something often much more dramatic, psychoactive drugs.
Yeah, another classic way to voluntarily alter consciousness, as Crash Course puts it.
So how do we even start categorizing these? There are so many.
Khan Academy offers a useful framework. They group them into 4 main buckets based on their main effects: depressants, stimulants, hallucinogens, and then opiates or opioids, which are often grouped with depressants but have key differences.
Okay, let's start with depressants. The name kind of gives it away.
Pretty much. They depress central nervous system function. They decrease arousal, slow down your body, slow neural activity. That's according to Khan Academy and NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse.
Alcohol being the big one, obviously.
The classic example, yeah. William S. Burroughs called it our national drug.
Right. What else falls under depressants?
Well, you have barbiturates and benzodiazepines. Both used medically, but also, potential for misuse. Barbiturates make you drowsy, calm, but they're risky. They can really slow your heart rate, breathing, even fatally.
And benzos, like Valium or Xanax.
Yep. Often prescribed for anxiety, insomnia. They also cause drowsiness, maybe some memory or coordination issues.
Yeah.
And mixing them with alcohol or other depressants. That seriously ups the danger.
Okay. Any others in this group?
There's GHB, which is sort of like alcohol but can cause seizures, coma, even death. And then inhalants, aerosols, gases, solvents.
Stuff people sniff.
Yeah, they give a quick alcohol-like effect, maybe warmth, busyness, but the health risks are severe nausea, confusion, heart problems, even sudden sniffing death. NIDA also warns about potential addiction and inhalant use disorder.
Now, you mentioned opiates, and opioids are often grouped here but are distinct.
They are. So you have natural opiates, think opium, morphine, heroin,
Oh.
and synthetic opioids, fentanyl, oxycodone. They do depress the central nervous system, slow heart rate, cause relaxation.
Right.
But their defining feature is analgesia. They reduce the perception of pain. Big difference.
How do they do that?
They mimic our natural endorphins, our body's own pain relief system. The downside is the brain can then stop making its own endorphins, which leads to really nasty withdrawal if someone stops using them. NIA's info on heroin explains this well.
It's a tough cycle. Are there effective treatments?
Thankfully, yes.
Mm-hmm.
NIDA lists FDA-approved options like methadone, buprenorphine, naltrexone to manage the addiction, and lofexidine specifically helps with withdrawal symptoms.
Okay, good to know. Right, let's look to the other side. Stimulants, the ones that rev things up.
Exactly. They excite the central nervous system, increase heart rate, blood pressure, make you more alert. Khan Academy and NI cover these well.
Like caffeine, nicotine.
The everyday legal ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Caffeine keeps us awake. Nicotine gives that buzz from epinephrine release. Feels pleasurable, but obviously comes with huge health risks, lung issues, cancer risk, addiction, especially bad for teen brain development.
Highly addictive, nicotine.
Very. Then you get into the stronger stuff. Amphetamines like Adderall, methamphetamines, MDMA, which is ecstasy or Molly.
What do they do?
Increase wakefulness, energy, alertness. But also nervousness, jitters. Long-term amphetamine misuse can lead to psychosis. High doses are dangerous overheating, heart problems.
And cocaine.
Derived from the coca plant. Small amounts give euphoria, energy, talkativeness. But more can cause irritability, paranoia, psychosis, and major heart risks, heart attacks, seizures, stroke. Also highly addictive with the withdrawal.
There are synthetic ones too, right? Like bath salts.
Yeah, synthetic cathinones, often called bath salts, related to khat, a plant stimulant. They cause euphoria, energy, but also confusion, agitation, aggression, hallucinations, really risky high heart rate, seizures. Khat itself has similar effects.
The Crash Course video mentioned Freud was initially keen on cocaine.
Huh. Yeah, quite the historical note. He thought it could cure morphine addiction. Didn't quite pan out. He ended up swapping it for a cigar habit that eventually contributed to his death. Sobering story.
Wow. And for these stimulant addictions, are there medications like for opioids?
NIDA says currently no FDA-approved meds specifically for stimulant use disorder. Treatment relies mainly on behavioral therapies.
Okay. Now for the third category. Hallucinogens or psychedelics. These mess with perception itself.
Right. Khan Academy explains they cause distorted perceptions, hallucinations, heightened sensations. They aren't really uppers or downers. They're their own thing.
Like LSD on shroom.
Yep. LSD, acid, psilocybin, magic mushrooms are classic examples. Altered perception, euphoria, but sometimes fear, anxiety, confusion too. Then there's peyote, mescaline, also PCP and ketamine, which are dissociative hallucinogens.
Dissociative, meaning?
Feeling disconnected from your body or reality. PCP can cause delusions, paranoia, aggression, serious health risks like seizures, coma, even death. Ketamine gives altered perception, detachment. High doses can lead to a K-hole. Long-term heavy use has risks too, memory problems, depression, urinary issues.
Any others?
Salvia, which can cause unpleasant feelings, hallucinations, detachment. NBOM's strong, unpredictable emotional effects and hallucinations. And synthetic cannabinoids like spice or K2.
Oh, like synthetic marijuana.
Sort of, but often much more dangerous. Effects can include rapid heart rate, unconsciousness, seizures, nausea, even death. Delta-8 THC is another cannabinoid that's intoxicating and largely unregulated with potential risks.
It's interesting. NIDA notes classic hallucinogens aren't typically addictive in the same way, but you can still develop a use disorder.
Right. The pattern of problematic use is still possible. And we can't forget the mind itself plays a role here, the placebo effect.
Ah, yes. Expectations matter.
Hugely. What you expect a drug to do can really influence the experience. That's from Crash Course. And with repeated use of many drugs, there's neuroadaptation.
Tolerance.
Tolerance, exactly. Your brain chemistry adapts, so you need more for the same effect. This is central to addiction, both physical and psychological dependence. It can cause serious damage over time.
And Khan Academy mentioned the reward pathway.
Yes, the brain's reward system involving dopamine, serotonin gets hijacked. Animal studies show this clearly. They'll keep seeking the drug, even when it leads to bad consequences. That drive becomes incredibly powerful.
Okay, so we've gone through hypnosis, drugs. Let's think about how just our basic senses relate to altered states, how we perceive the world normally and how that can change.
It's a great link, because understanding our senses shows how our normal perception is already an active construction by the brain.
Like the difference between sensation and perception?
Exactly. Crash Course explains sensation is bottom-up. Your senses gathering raw data, like light hitting your eye. Perception is top-down. Your brain organizing and interpreting that data into something meaningful, like recognizing a face.
And if perception goes wrong, like with prosopagnosia.
Face blindness, yeah. Oliver Sacks wrote about this. The person's eyes work fine, sensation is intact, but the brain can't perceive or recognize the faces. Fascinating and difficult condition.
Let's dig into a specific sense. Hearing, for instance. It's more than just sound waves hitting an eardrum, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Sailor.org explains sound waves are changes in air pressure. Frequency gives us pitch, how high or low a sound is. Amplitude gives us loudness.
And the ear is designed to capture these.
Ingeniously so. The outer ear, the part you see, the pinna, and the ear canal funnels sound to the eardrum. Then the middle ear is crucial.
The tiny bones?
Yep, the ossicles. Malleus, stapes, stapron, hammer, anvil, stirrup. They act like levers, amplifying the eardrum's vibrations and transmitting them to the oval window, which leads to the inner ear.
Why amplify?
Well, the inner ear is fluid-filled, and it takes more force to move fluid than air, so the middle ear matches that impedance. It also has tiny muscles that can dampen loud sounds, kind of a protective reflex. That's from Crash Course Anatomy and Physiology.
Okay, so the vibrations reach the inner ear. Then what?
Then they enter the cochlea, that snail-shaped structure. Inside is the basilar membrane. Different parts of this membrane vibrate depending on the frequency of the sound.
Like a piano keyboard?
Sort of, yeah. The base end is stiff in response to high frequencies. The far end is floppier in response to low frequencies. And sitting on top of this membrane is the organ of Corti.
That's where the magic happens.
That's where transduction happens. It contains thousands of tiny hair cells. When the basilar membrane vibrates, these hair cells bend, and that movement gets converted into electrical signals.
Ah, the language the brain understands.
Exactly. These signals travel up the auditory pathway to the auditory cortex. The location of the vibrating hair cells tells the brain the pitch, and the rate at which they fire tells the brain the loudness.
Wow. And the inner ear does balance, too.
Right, the vestibular
Correct.
system, it has semicircular canals for detecting rotation, like nodding or shaking your head, and the utricle and saccule for detecting linear acceleration, like in a car or elevator.
Is that why you get motion sick?
Often, yes. It's sensory conflict. Your inner ear says you're moving, but maybe your eyes say you're sitting still in a cabin. The brain gets confused.
How do we know where sound is coming from?
Clever tricks. Sailor.org mentions two main cues. For high frequencies, there's an intensity difference. Your head blocks the sound slightly, making it quieter in the farther ear. For low frequencies, it's about timing. The sound arrives at one ear just fractions of a second before the other. The brain detects these tiny differences.
Amazing. And this all gets processed. Where?
Auditory cortex, which has a map based on frequency tonotopic map. Then higher level areas process complexity, like speech in Wernicke's area. That Ontario hearing PDF has a good diagram.
Okay, let's switch to vision, another incredibly complex sense.
Definitely. Light also travels in waves. Wavelength gives us hue, the color we see. Amplitude gives us brightness. That's from Crash Course Psychology.
And the eye focuses this light.
Right. The cornea, pupil, and lens work together to focus light onto the retina at the back of the eye.
The retina is the key part.
That's where the photoreceptors are. Rods and cones. Rods are for dim light, peripheral vision, black and white. Cones are for bright light, color, and detail. They're packed into the center, the fovea. That's in the Ontario PDF on the eye.
How do we see color?
Two main theories work together. Trichromatic theory says we have three types of cones. Red, green, and blue sensitive. Like pixels on a screen, mixing these gives all colors.
Okay.
But opponent process theory explains things like afterimages. It suggests some cells are excited by, say, red, but inhibited by green, or excited by blue and inhibited by yellow. These opposing processes help us perceive the full spectrum.
And how does the signal get from the eye to the brain?
So rods and cones pass signals to bipolar cells, then to ganglion cells. The long tails, the axons of these ganglion cells, bundle together to form the optic nerve.
Optic nerve.
This nerve leads the eye. At the optic chiasm, part of the nerves cross over, specifically the signals from the inner half nasal side of each retina cross.
Why crossover?
So that the left half of your brain processes everything you see in your right visual field, and the right brain processes the left field, contralateral processing.
Got it. Where do the signals go after the chiasm?
To the thalamus, a relay station in the brain, specifically a part called the LGN, lateral geniculate nucleus, and then to the visual cortex in the occipital lobe, right at the back of your head.
And the visual cortex itself is complex.
Oh yes, the primary visual cortex, V1, has layers. Layer 4C gets the main input from the LGN. It has simple cells that respond to lines of specific orientations.
Lines.
Yeah, like a horizontal line, or a vertical one, or one at 45 degrees. Then complex cells respond to orientation, but also movement. These are organized into hypercolumns, processing input from both eyes, color information in areas called blobs. It's incredibly intricate. The Ontario PDF on the visual cortex goes deep on this.
And early experience matters here.
Critically important. There are critical periods for development. If a kid has a condition like strabismus, cross eyes, or amblyopia, lazy eye, that isn't corrected early, the brain might not develop proper binocular vision, which is crucial for depth perception or stereopsis.
Wow. And language ties into vision, too.
Absolutely. That Wir Nichtgeschwind model image shows a pathway. If you read a word, visual info goes to visual cortex, then association areas where senses merge and the word is recognized, then Wernicke's area for understanding, then Broca's area for planning speech, then motor cortex to actually say it. Damage to Wernicke's or Broca's causes very different kinds of language problems.
And the brain helps us see things consistently, right? Like an object doesn't look like it's shrinking just because it moves further away.
Exactly. That's perceptual constancy, size constancy, shape constancy, color constancy. Khan Academy touches on these visual cues that help us perceive a stable world.
Okay, what about taste and smell? The chemical senses.
Right. Crash Course Anatomy and Physiology calls them that because they rely on chemoreceptors detecting molecules.
Let's start with smell, olfaction.
Okay. Volatile chemicals, odorants, float into your nasal cavity. High up, there's the olfactory epithelium. It has specialized olfactory sensory neurons. Each has receptors for specific odor molecules.
So one neuron, one type of smell molecule.
Roughly, yes, or a small group. When an odorant binds, it triggers a signal. These signals go directly to the olfactory bulb in the brain, bypassing the thalamus, interestingly.
Direct line.
Pretty much. From the bulb, signals go to the olfactory cortex for identifying the smell, and importantly, to the limbic system, amygdala, hypothalamus. That's why smells can trigger strong emotions and memories.
Like Proust and his Madeline.
The classic example.
Yeah.
And losing your sense of smell, anosmia, shows how vital it is, affects taste, memory, even detecting dangers like smoke or spoiled food.
So taste gustation is linked to smell.
Hugely linked, but distinct. Taste happens on the tongue, mostly. In tiny bumps called papillae, there are taste buds. Inside the buds are taste receptor cells, not neurons actually, but specialized epithelial cells.
Okay.
They have little gustatory hair sticking out into a taste pore. When taste and taste molecules dissolve in saliva, they bind to receptors on these hairs. This triggers signals sent via cranial nerves to the taste cortex.
What are the basic tastes?
Sweet, salty, which works via sodium ions opening channels, sour, from hydrogen ions, bitter, and umami, that savory taste.
And that old tongue map with sweet at the tip, bitter at the back?
Totally debunked. You can taste all the basic tastes all over your tongue, though some areas might be slightly more sensitive.
And the smell connection?
It's massive. As you chew, odor molecules travel up the back of your throat to your nasal cavity. That's retronasal olfaction. It's estimated maybe 80% of what we perceive as flavor is actually coming from smell.
Explains why food is so bland with a cold.
Exactly.
Okay, one more sense, though it's maybe more complex. Pain.
Yeah, the TED-Ed video defines it well. An unpleasant sensory and emotional experience linked to actual or potential tissue damage. It's not just a raw sensation.
How does it work? Nociceptors.
Right. Specialized nerve endings, nociceptors, detect harmful stimuli. They send signals up the spinal cord to the brain. It involves both gray matter, neurons, and white matter, the connecting highways.
And in the brain.
Signals go to the cortex for conscious awareness, but also activate a salience network that grabs your attention. Makes sense, right? Pain is important. Motor pathways trigger reflexes, like pulling your hand away.
Can we control pain?
To some extent.
Mm-hmm.
The brain has modulation networks that use natural painkillers, like endorphins and enkephalins, to dial the pain down. And pain sensitivity varies a lot between people.
What about treatments?
Ranges from over-the-counter meds, stronger prescription drugs, anesthetics, but also behavioral approaches are key. Distraction, relaxation, meditation, CBT, and new research is targeting specific brain networks for chronic pain, even using MRI for personalized treatments.
Okay, fascinating stuff on senses. Let's move to something we all do every night: sleep. Another altered state.
Definitely. Crash Course calls it a periodic, natural, reversible, near-total loss of consciousness. But it's super active, biologically.
We cycle through stages, right? Every 90 minutes or so.
Roughly, yeah. Measured with EEG brainwaves, you start relaxed but awake with alpha waves. Then NREM1, light sleep, maybe those weird hypnagogic jerks or falling sensations. NREM2 is a bit deeper, with sleep spindles on the EEG, harder to wake up. Then NREM3 is deep sleep, slow delta waves, Sleepwalking, sleep talking usually happen here.
And then REM sleep.
Right. Rapid eye movement sleep. Brain waves look more like you're awake, actually.
Mhm.
Vivid dreaming happens here, but your body's muscles are essentially paralyzed, probably, so you don't act out your dreams. Khan Academy details these stages well.
And we need this sleep, obviously.
Fundamentally, lack of sleep impacts everything. Health, thinking, mood. It's predictive for depression, linked to weight gain, messes with your immune system, slows reaction time. The list goes on.
And there are sleep disorders, too.
Loads of them. Insomnia, narcolepsy, falling asleep uncontrollably, sleep apnea, where you stop breathing repeatedly.
Scary.
Yeah. And REM sleep behavior disorder, where the muscle paralysis fails and people do act out dreams. Mike Birbiglia, the comedian, talks about his experience with this. Also, night terrors, which are different from nightmares. They happen in deep NREM3 sleep, while nightmares are in REM.
Let's talk about dreams themselves. We spend years of our lives dreaming.
About 6 years on average. Dreams are often vivid, emotional, sometimes totally bizarre.
Do they relate to our waking life?
Often, yes. The sources mention examples like people dreaming about Tumblr after using it, or the Tetris effect, dreaming about falling blocks after playing the game. Dreaming might also help process trauma, though sometimes that goes wrong, like in PTSD with recurring nightmares.
Why do we dream? Lots of theories, right, on neurology.
Yeah, the study of dreams, it's still debated. Freud's wish fulfillment idea, dreams as disguised unconscious desires, is mostly dismissed now.
Okay, so what are the current main ideas?
Well, there's information processing. Dreams help sort and store the day's experiences. Consolidating memories, maybe helping learning.
Makes sense.
Physiological function. Maybe the brain activity during REM helps develop and preserve neural pathways. Babies have tons of REM sleep, which fits this idea. Cognitive development. Dreams might simulate reality, engaging similar brain networks as daydreaming, helping us develop cognitively.
And the last one, neural activity.
Sometimes called activation synthesis. This suggests dreams are just the brain trying to make sense of random neural firing happening during REM sleep, weaving a story out of noise, basically.
So we don't know for sure which is right.
Probably elements of truth in several of them. What's clear is that REM sleep, and the dreaming that usually comes with it, seems vital.
And our sleep isn't random, it follows a cycle.
Our circadian rhythm, yeah. That internal 24-hour biological clock, it regulates sleepiness, body temperature, other things. Daylight is the main cue to keep it synced up, but artificial light affects it too.
That's jet lag, right? Clock out of sync.
Exactly. Your internal clock is on home time, but the sun outside is on destination time. And these rhythms change with age. Teens tend to be night owls, older adults more early birds. It even makes sleeping in hard sometimes.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from hypnosis through drugs, senses, sleep. It's really clear our normal consciousness is just one piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. It underlines that crash course point about the messy and marvelous human mind. These altered states aren't always extreme. Some are subtle. Some are just part of our natural biology.
Yeah, essential parts like sleep. So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Think about how much we're still learning about all this.
Right, the science is always evolving.
It really makes you question, the edges of our own awareness, the nature of reality as we experience it. What else might we discover about the potential hidden in these different ways of being?
It's a fascinating question to ponder.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this exploration today.